First, Josh, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you, mate?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Not too bad. So before we get into your upcoming album and what you've been busy with, I'd like to go back to the beginning. And now, what first got you interested in playing stringed instruments?
I think, well, the first time I picked up a guitar, I was pretty young.
Mm.
And it was actually nylon string guitar, so it's a classical guitar. But I was terrible at practicing as a kid. I wasn't very disciplined.
Okay.
But I think I remember seeing a John Williams concert when I was really young. My mum took me to a Hay Festival in South Wales. And that was pretty inspiring. He's one of the great classical guitarists. And so I kind of had a love for the Spanish guitar from a pretty young age. So I guess maybe it was that.
And well, it's interesting because I assume this is the same John Williams as who does all the Star Wars stuff, or is it?
No, it's a different.
Okay.
It's actually a different John Williams.
So I didn't clear that up because I was thinking, oh, did he play guitar as well? But and because I read you also like people like Paco de Lucia and those kinds of classical players. So what appealed to you in that type of playing?
Well, I think it's interesting. I discovered Paco de Lucia much later, and flamenco much later.
Okay.
And that was when I was in Spain. I obviously knew about the kind of guitar tradition, especially in the south of Spain. But it was when I was living in Cadiz. It's actually the first night I was there. I saw a flamenco show, and was just totally blown away. I didn't realize how rich that tradition was until I saw it up close. Because
you say you were sold quite early on the guitar, so then to take that step and study guitar in a different country is quite a big step, I suppose. So what made you kind of decide, well, this is something I'd like to or want to do?
Well, I think it's funny because I was playing much more steel string acoustic guitar as a kind of teenager, and and I wanted to reconnect with nylon playing. And I knew that the south of Spain was the kind of heartland of the Spanish guitar tradition, and it was I think it was I wasn't sort of entirely sure what to expect or what I was going to find, but the way the flamenco guitar is played down there is remarkable. It really is. It's like, for me, they're the best guitarists in the world, and there's so many phenomenal guitarists in all of those cities, and you see them playing in local bars every night, and it's that's pretty inspiring. I've never seen a guitar tradition that's that special anywhere else in the world, really. So, yeah.
And before you went over, did you already have kind of this feeling like, I want to be a musician, this is what I'm kind of, this is the path I'm walking down?
I think it was, that had always been in the back of my mind, I think. I mean, I started writing songs when I was maybe about 16.
Okay.
They were all terrible, but yeah, there was, I got a lot out of writing songs. I found like it was, like the creative outlet for me that was by far the most relevant and important to me. I think there was, that was in the back of my mind, and I wanted to start, trying to learn from stuff that was a bit less familiar, and try and push myself and discover some new sounds, and it was really a journey of trying to discover new things, I think.
So was that kind of the mentality after you've studied in Spain to go to South America as well and discover some new inspiration? Or?
Yeah, I planned them both at the same time, and it was kind of, in a way, Latin America had always been this kind of, mythical place in my mind. I think for Europeans, America is, both north and south, it's kind of this incredibly exciting, different place. that is very different to what we're used to. And so for me, that had always been the kind of thing that I'd been planning for longest, and almost that I was most excited about. But when I actually got to Spain as well, it was incredibly hard to leave. I really fell in love with that country in a way that I hadn't expected to. But it was incredibly exciting moving on as well, and because it's the music is radically different, obviously.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a wonderful journey out there as well. Yeah.
When you're in that situation where you kind of feel like falling in love with the tradition, with the culture, with everything, and then you kind of make that decision, well, but I have to continue my journey. What is that like? What did you see in front of you in a way?
I don't know. I think I'd made some great friendships and stuff in Spain, and lifelong friends, which that was obviously in a way probably the hardest thing to. But when you've got, I get itchy feet normally in a place. In Cadiz I didn't.
Okay.
But as soon as you're moving on again, it's incredibly exciting, and anyone who loves traveling knows what that feels like, I think. Right. Going to new places is really exciting, and especially if you give yourself the time to kind of settle somewhere, and if you're just always moving, it's full on. But if you give yourself a chance to spend 5-6 weeks in one place, you can really get to know it and kind of really find things like the music scene and that kind of thing.
Right. Get some roots.
Yeah, and make friends, and yeah. And
then, but you end up in, I think, I might be wrong, but in Bolivia, where you discovered the Charango. Sorry, the Charango. So can you tell me a little bit for somebody who isn't familiar with the instrument, kind of, because I did read it's a 10-string instrument, but how does it compare to, let's say, the guitar?
They're remarkable instruments. I think they're really, really beautiful instruments. They don't have bass strings, so the charango is kind of, it's not the very smallest, but it's the most common and small version of the instrument. And they have a kind of very open tuning, but it's more in size, more similar to a mandolin, and in a way, the strings are made of nylon, so it's a different sound to the mandolin, but it occupies that kind of frequency range, I guess. So it's above a guitar, and because there are no bass strings, it's almost a more rhythmic instrument. It's often about the right hand and what the right hand is doing that gives it the kind of, can give a song movement and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, they're incredible instruments, and I think an invention of indigenous Latin America, and they have a fascinating history, and they're very special instruments.
And when you're there and you're trying to, well, you discover this instrument, but then also you're trying to master it, I suppose. How did that go? You're in this different environment, kind of out of your comfort zone, I suppose. So how did that process go of kind of developing yourself musically from there?
Well, it was, first of all, I had to find an instrument, and that was an adventure in itself.
Okay.
And my instruments are made by a luthier called Juan Acha, who's based in La Paz. The guy's a genius. Okay. His instruments are really, really works of art. They're beautifully made. And so once I'd found my instrument, La Paz is an amazing city. It's kind of very striking when you see it. It's so high, and it's got this kind of huge bowl and amazing kind of skyline. But I wanted to be somewhere smaller, and so that's why I went to Sucre, and I found a teacher there, a teacher called Carlos, who just at the local music school, and he was the one who started helping me kind of, get a grip on some of the local, some of the traditional rhythms, and it was really cool to learn from him. He's an amazing player, so it's really cool.
And I suppose a lot of things that you've learned in Spain and also in Latin America, you kind of carry with you to where you are now. So can you can you share some of the things that you still incorporate in terms of
Sure.
songwriting? Which you mentioned you started songwriting early. So how did these experiences in Spain and Bolivia influence your songwriting?
Sure, I think more often than not, it's the rhythms themselves. I mean, the most recent song we've put out is a song called Desert Days, and that is a huayno rhythm. So it's a traditional kind of folk rhythm from the Andes. Yeah, there's a kind of often an inherent swing in the rhythm. It's slightly pushed and pulled, which is what I think I fell in love with about the rhythms from that part of the world. They're not, you know, back home we're used to such straight rhythms that are very kind of, I don't know, just very straight. And there's just an inherent movement to these rhythms. And, you know, for me, I've wanted to, you know, to try and experiment further and add things like bass to those rhythms, because that's much less, I think, common in the traditional Andean folk setup. So it's about trying to, you know, learn from some of these rhythms and then try and bring some of, you know, my own more familiar songwriting styles to the music. And
you mentioned that the earlier songs you weren't too happy with, looking back. What was the first song, or first batch of songs? When did you write those that you felt, well, now I'm onto something? Now was it even before all those travels? Or
I think it was, to be honest, it was all after. There was maybe one song that was written before, but I think it was after.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I had never written, I'd never kind of focused all my energies into songwriting until that point.
Okay.
And you know, it was once you know, I think it is a real craft, and I had a lot to learn and it's just practicing. And I think it was more the people around me that were like, you know, I think these songs are working, these ones aren't, keep going. And it was just about pushing myself and trying to write as much as I could. Yeah.
Because for you, when did the words come in? Because this is just an assumption for somebody who's not a musician, but when you're studying these instruments and these styles of music, I suppose, especially you mentioned flamenco, I don't know if the Andean music has a lot of vocals or lyrics in it, but when did lyrics become a thing? When you were 16, did you already jot down words and thoughts?
Yes. Yes, I think like lyrics are a really important part of songwriting to me. I think it's my heroes growing up were people like Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen and you know, the great lyricists. And yeah, I think in a way it's artists like that have really left their mark on me on that side of songwriting. But I think, you know, that's one of the things you look back at songs you were writing when you were younger, and you're cringing at the lyrics you were writing. But I think that's just part of growing, and you've got to look back with soft eyes, I think. Otherwise, it's yeah, you know what I mean.
And I suppose you need some life experience as well to be able to write a decent song.
Exactly.
But so then you have all this experience, and then I don't know what the timeline is exactly, but did you return to London and then kind of think, well, how can I get my music out there?
Yes, basically, yeah. And it was sort of, yeah, it was there that I was writing a lot as well, and I was spending a lot of time in South Wales writing. But yeah, you know, I had jobs in London, cafes and pubs, that sort of thing. Was, you know, trying to work on a live show as well. I think for me, I used to struggle a lot with nerves, like really badly, and it was important to get some time on stage and to try and break through those fears a bit.
So that kind of trial by fire, I suppose, by throwing yourself in there. First let me ask, what was kind of the most memorable show of that period, kind of one that sticks out for you?
Yeah, I think it was, there was one show in Camden in London, which was kind of the first, it was my first headline show, and yeah, I just think if I had, we had this kind of crazy set with a lot of friends, and my friends in a band called Wovoka Gentle, incredible band. They were backing me up on stage. My manager was playing drums, and my mate Josh was playing accordion at that show. And I think, you know, I think it was a special show. And if it had gone badly, I think it would have been really hard to come back from that. But it was it was a show where I think, you know, I was able to say to my friends, like, I'm taking this seriously, and even my parents, like, I really want to do this. And so that felt like a bit of a kind of baptism, I guess. And,
I find that a very interesting thought, because up until that point then, did you or maybe people around you still kind of feel like not unsure where this was going or what you wanted out of it?
Yes, I think anyone who's a musician or actually, you know, an artist in any way, if you're a painter, whatever it is, or, you know, there's a skepticism of the people around you, and there is a kind of slight battle for legitimacy, you know, that you're worthy of trying to do something like this, because it is hard, you know, it's obviously hard to try and make a living from something creative. So yeah, it's like that first period is hard for people trying to do that, I think. You just, you know, I think that for me felt like a moment where people were maybe understood that I was taking it seriously and really wanted to pursue it. Yeah. So
then, and I assume that gives you a sense of confidence then as well to kind of continue.
Yes, I think so. I think yeah, like I said, if it had gone badly, it would have been hard to come back from. I think, just like, you know, for yourself. But yeah, it's, you know, it was a fun show, and people seemed to enjoy it. So.
And now you've released a couple of EPs, and now gearing up towards releasing an album. So before we get into a couple of the songs and kind of what you want out of the album, how important is a first body of work kind of like this? How much, yeah, well, it's going to sound weird, but what does it mean to you to work on this debut album?
Yeah, it's sort of, I've been wanting to make an album forever, of course, and yeah, it's really exciting. I think EPs are an amazing way of kind of experimenting and trying to find a sound, I guess. And yeah, there's maybe a little bit more freedom. You're not tied to it in the same way. But you know, for me, it felt like I had people around me guiding me as well, who were pushing me to keep developing and keep kind of experimenting. And so, yeah, I think I finally I felt a bit more ready to try and tackle an LP. But yeah, it obviously means a lot, and I think, you know, the album is the sacred format for kind of presenting a world to someone and the essence of a project. And but you know, maybe it's dangerous to build it up too much as well, and it's just, you know, maybe just a collection of songs as well. So.
Did you write, because you mentioned South Wales and going there a lot, did you write most of it there?
This album the bulk of it was actually written, was written in southern Spain, in the kind of near Tarifa, right on the southern tip, which is a beautiful part of the world. And yeah, I think that the heart of the album was written there, but then some of it, a couple of bits were written in London, and then the rest was written in Wales.
Did you go down to southern Spain specifically to write?
Yes.
So can you kind of take me through this process in a way of kind of how the environment has an influence and why you wanted to change sceneries?
Yeah, I think, well, it's always an adventure. I mean, I drive down when I go. Okay. And because you've got all of your precious equipment in the car, you're sleeping in the car, and a little shit heap of a car. But you know, that's a real adventure, and I mean, driving through Spain is amazing. It's such a wonderful place to drive. There's no one on the road, the landscapes are amazing, and it's sort of, it's really nice. I really enjoy it. But I think, yeah, right, one of the wonderful things about doing music in this job is that, you know, you can, when you're writing, you can be anywhere. And for me, it's nice to be somewhere that's a little bit, you know, out of the way and isolated. And, you know, the way I see it is that that's my time to see the world a bit and to be in a different place. And it's interesting because I think when you're writing in a new place, often, you know, you'll end up writing about things from home, but as soon as you leave, and when you go back home, you end up writing about where you've just been. It's sort of, I know that sounds kind of maybe a little unintuitive, but you know, often in writing, I feel like you're mining memory a bit, and places take on a slightly more kind of surreal and sort of almost dreamlike space in your mind if you're looking back on them with, you know, rose-tinted spectacles and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
What do you hope this album will allow you to do, in a sense, in terms of where you want to go next?
Gosh, I'm not sure I've thought about it too much. It's sort of, you know, baby steps. I think it's. I hope people like it, and it's, you know, to me it feels like a progression from the EPs that have already come out. There's, I think, much more rhythm in this record, and you know, I think, yeah, it would be. I'd love people to come to the shows and feel like they need to move, that there's a bit more rhythm and movement in the shows. I think that's. I'll leave it there.
Sounds good. Josh, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure, Robin. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.